I'll give them 1 or 2 minutes for them to settle down and come. Very warm welcome to each one of you, all the viewers watching this program live on our social media, whatever portals. Please, if you have any questions, there's a number flashed on your screen. Kindly share your questions. We'll be delighted to present all the questions to the distinguished speakers. The speakers already arrived. Before I move further, let me have the privilege of introducing what's happening in MMA next few days so that you don't miss them, you start coming and attending them. On 20th of August, that is tomorrow. Tomorrow we have an event, Mental Well-Being Series, Preparing the Mind, Brain for Leadership. This is happening tomorrow evening. We have got Mr. Ennapadam Krishnamurthy will be sharing his thoughts. To chair this session, we have Mr. Annadurai, he is Executive Director, Head of Indian Oil Operations in South and from Chennai. He will be joining us. Then again, 27th, we have a talk as usual for Read and Grow, which we do it mainly for the MBA students, for them to understand the subject. What we'll be discussing is mental models, 30 thinking tools that separate the average from exceptional. Again, we have an outstanding panel. Sangeeta Shankaran Sumesh, she is a business leader, independent director, IIB and many industries. And also have Morgan Kumaresan, Executive President of HR, Konak Information System. We also have with us Rajesh Balan Venkateshan, Chief Financial Officer, Latin View Analytics. This is a panel. So it will be a nice evening. Don't miss it, and you must be here on 27th evening. Then on 12th September, we have again Read and Grow series, another book, another team specialist who will be joining us. Then on 14th September, Kevin Care MMA Chinni Kitchen Innovation Award. So I'm taking 1 or 2 minutes so that the people can join us, so that they don't miss a very important part of today's discussion. Prabha Narasimhan, she is the Managing Director and CEO of Colgate Palmolive. She is a chief guest. This thing is happening at IIT Research Park Auditorium. It's one of the finest events. If you are not attended, you must attend. And we have some outstanding innovators come and showcase the innovation. Out of over 300 nominations, we pick up 3 people to win the award, and we pay almost $1 lakh to each of the innovators. And 18th September, we have another talk by General Arun. It's again a fantastic speaker, and he's going to speak on something different. Straight lines to great horizons, endless possibilities. The subject General Arun is going to be talking. This is happening on 18th of September. We also have another general talking. He's a current GOC of Southern State, General Barar. He's going to be talking to us Peacetime Challenge, Army's Experience in Wayanad. So we got a lot of events already lined up for next few months. These are some of the important things I thought I may share with you. And coming to today's subject, this is a subject which you have been discussing, you have been talking about it, and I know you must have seen the synopsis. US and other Western countries used to laugh at India, the way the population then started thinking about MMA. They become envy of MMA. I mean, envy of MMA is the envy of India for the population. Now it has become added tremendous dividend. To discuss more, we have 3 outstanding speakers. Demographic dividend is Boon or Bane. And each one of them have done some phenomenal work in this area. And ladies and gentlemen, put your hand together to welcome the distinguished speakers for this evening. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hand together. Welcome this evening distinguished speakers. The chief guest and who is going to deliver the keynote address, Mr. Ramasundaram IAS, retired from the Nadu Cadre. Then we have Mr. Suresh Babu, Director, Madras Institute of Development Studies, MIDS, and Professor Mahalingam, Assistant Professor, Bharathidasan Institute of Management. And also we have Satyamurthy, Convener of Policy Matters, who is the partner for this event. May I request the distinguished speakers, please take your place on the dais, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause for the distinguished panel this evening. The format of this evening is I request Satyamurthy to just set the context of give opening remarks. Thereafter, each of the speakers will share their insights and followed by Q&A. Now, at the beginning, let me introduce all the speakers for this evening so that you know more about them. It's already been shared with you along with the invitation. Mr. Ramasundaram is a retired IAS officer of 1979 batch. He holds a master's in chemistry from Loyola, Chennai, and also master of applied demography from the University of Southern California, Los Angeles. While in IAS for 31 years, he worked in Tamil Nadu State Cadre and also worked in central government and the World Bank. His two major areas of specialization were public health and infrastructure. He set up Tamil Nadu AIDS Control Society in 1994 and led the construction of the team from OMR and in Chennai and also a tidal park in Coimbatore. In 2008, he also constructed a new assembly in Chennai in 2010. After voluntarily retiring from IAS in 2010, Ram joined the private sector, has been working as a CEO, president, and advisor of various companies till date. Very warm welcome to you, Mr. Ramasundaram. It's indeed a privilege to have you with us. Let me have the privilege of introducing Mr. Dr. Suresh Babu, Director, Madras Institute of Studies, MIDS. He has got his PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, specializing in applied macroeconomics and also trade and industrial economics and development economics. He has held key academic positions, including Professor of IIT Madras. His extensive research and teaching career span roles of leading institutions like Institute of Social and Economic Challenges, Bangalore, and also the Center for Development Studies, Trivandrum. Dr. Suresh, pleasure to welcome you this evening to share your insights on this very, very important topic. Let me have the privilege of introducing Professor Mahalingam. He's a professor from Bharathidasan Institute of Management. He earned his PhD in Business Administration with a focus on managerial economics from Arizona State University. His research span applied economics, international trade, quantitative marketing, with a strong academic background, including degree in mathematics and applied economics. He had held various teaching and research positions in prestigious institutions. His work has been published in leading journals and he has been recognized with multiple academic awards. Very warm welcome, Mahalingam. He's come all the way from Trichy to be with us this evening. Welcome again, sir. Satyamurthy doesn't need an introduction. He's our partner, Policy Matters, and we do a lot of work together. Satyamurthy is a convener of Policy Matters. He's a policy analyst, political commentator, the expertise in politics in Tamil Nadu as well as India's southern neighbors, Maldives and Sri Lanka. And he has also authored several books and writes regular column. If you're not reading it, you must read his column. Very, very inspiring and thought-provoking. Now, I request Satyamurthy to set the context and give opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Good evening. Good evening, Team MMA, for organizing this timely event. Timely in the sense, any time is good time in our country and context to have a session like this on demography. See, just 30 years back, that is about a generation back, we were told that in India, population was a problem, or growth of population, rate of growth of population was a huge economic problem, social problem, etc. We accepted. Suddenly, or immediately after the economic reforms commenced, or a little earlier, we were told India's population is going to be a boon, a dividend. That was because we were getting more and more Indians in the working age group, earning age group, and with the purchasing capacity. That's a wonderful experience that we are having, the present generation especially. And we belonging to the older generation or an earlier generation are watching India grow, the Indians grow. Our midriff is getting stronger and bulkier because of economic progress, both of the nation and of the individual. Where is it leading us to as a nation and a people? And two, where are we looking at it another generation from now? So only we have to accept whatever we may say of the Indian economy, the years and decades immediately after independence. The nation laid a very strong, rather relatively strong ground for better health care compared to the pre-independence era. Today, that is also meant that we have an average healthier Indian compared to 100 years back. It also means the mortality age is going up, has already gone up and it's still going up. Is it going to be a Boon or a Bane? That question also the policy maker has to address, which is not being done. We all know the people in the 60 plus generation, they are healthier than earlier. The average Indian middle class I'm talking about lives up to 80, 85 years healthier. But what is its productivity, its economic contribution to the society? As long as he doesn't create problems for others, particularly in terms of health and other issues, or has got the wherewithal to face it, that by itself is a economic boon to the nation. But beyond that, there is a large population that also lives up to that age, but not with that kind of healthcare facilities. It comes with its own burdens, it comes with its own problems, not just for the individual, but for the economy. I'm not looking only at that, but even as we look at the benefits of the demographic dividend, as we know, we have to look at the other also. Well, the government is doing enough in terms of policy initiatives to strengthen and benefit from the positives of demographic dividend. What are we planning? What are we going to do in the years and decades to come? I don't think anyone in the government is giving any serious thought to it, because it is framing a policy for that is easier than finding the resources and making the commitment to make it work. This is the very idea behind this evening's title, and we have three able speakers who know their subject, and we are waiting for them to deliver the address. And no, I am not going to have any comments beyond this. Sir, I invite you, Mr. Ramasundaram, to deliver the keynote address. Over to you, sir.
Not immediately. I think it's Mr. Suresh Babu's presentation is here. Would you like to go?
No, please.
Anyway, while they are doing it, good evening. Thanks for those of you who have come. It reminds me of my college days because there's a concentration of people in the last row near the door. So, and my senior colleague, Mr. Sivasailam, is also here. Thank you very much for coming, sir.
Post-COVID scenario, many senior citizens are sitting at home and watching you online.
Anyway, before I dive into I have only 3 slides. One of our seniors, we are all members of the Tamil Nadu Retired IAS Association, which is a very active body. We meet once in 3 months. We have people, we are all relatively younger there. I am 70, but I am among the younger people in that association. One of our seniors used to say, we always write IAS retired as RETD. He says, don't write RETD because RETD is also the abbreviation for retarded. So, most people think anyway we are retarded, we don't have to confess it ourselves. So write RETIRED. So I just saw that and then whether it was a pun. This is a subject in which everybody has an opinion. But the facts may or may not be what we think. Let me just give you a couple of numbers and then I'll ask the audience, what do you think of that? At the time of independence, our population was 35 crore. Now we are exactly 4 times, 140 crore. Do you think it's because Indians are producing more and more children over the last 70 plus years? Anybody who thinks we are producing more children, please put up your hand. Okay. So the fact is actually, it is not because we are producing more and more children. Actually, the average number of children per family has come less than half. In the Hindi-speaking states, it used to be about 6. Now it has come down to 3. In the southern states, it used to be 4. It has come down to 2. But then why the growth? So that is why the demographic transition. In a pre-modern society, both the birth rate and death rate are very high. That is the first part. And then as health facilities and nutrition improve, death rates keep falling very quickly. Whereas birth rates take a little time because it's a more social phenomenon rather than just a health phenomenon. It takes a little time to decrease. And that is the period during which population grows. No country is an exception to this. Even the Western countries have gone through that. They did that about 100 years ago and we are now going through it. Within India itself, states like Kerala and Tamil Nadu have more or less reached the final stage. Very little growth. States like UP and Bihar are still going through the transition. That's why the growth is there. But the good news is that everywhere birth rates are falling. Now, this is a disturbing slide. I am showing the disparity between states in terms of income. Now, government's own data, some of the I think bottom lines are not showing here. In terms of per capita income, the southern 5 states, their per capita income is about 4 times that of the population in UP, Bihar and Jharkhand. So that is the disturbing feature of population, not just the numbers, but the lower level of development. There can be different, many arguments why it is so. I would say better governance in the south, more literacy. My wife is from UP, so she says, you people have had a peaceful history. We were invaded by this one, that one. We always were fighting, so there was no time for, like Tamil Nadu, you had time for Bharathidasan and Carnatic music, where we spent all the time fighting the enemies. Maybe partly true, but the fact is that since independence, you can't blame any outsider for lack of development. It's our own administration, elected governments. So maybe standards in governance vary. So how the government is going to address that, we have no answers to that. I'm just placing some of the facts and then we'll have a Q&A, so we'll see what. On the last slide is something which the average person thinks, Muslims are multiplying much more and then at some point they will overtake Hindus, which is not a fact. So even the Muslim fertility rate is falling. I mean, it is slightly higher than Hindus, but there are other communities, other religions which have got a lower fertility than Hindus. As you can see, Sikhs, Jains, of course small numbers, but they have a much lower fertility. In terms of total population, yes, Hindus percentage is declined by about 5%, Muslims have gone up by about 7%. But the fact is, the average Hindu family in UP, Bihar or Jharkhand has more children than the average Muslim family in the south. So that's a fact which can be verified. There it's about 3, here it's about 2, irrespective of religion. So rather than religion, it is a region where you live seems to determine the family size, your life expectancy, and also the professional outlook. The final point is Bihar is about 80% rural, whereas in the south we are almost 55% urban, only 45% is rural. Now what happens when your population is 80% rural? Everybody is in agriculture work, or the men migrate to other states for construction work. I remember when I was in charge of the assembly building, 100% of the labor came from Hindi-speaking states. So I persuaded the then CM, Mr. Karunanidhi, that your dream building has been constructed not by Tamils but by Hindi-speaking people. So you must have a Badakana on the same pandal the next day. So he spoke to somebody in Buhari, they sent mutton biryani. And so that is the first time in the same dais, he spoke in Tamil, for which there were no claps. Then when IAS also translated that into Hindi, whenever that was speaking, so there were a lot of claps. So he said, this is the irony. I said, that is an irony, yes, your building was done by Hindi-speaking people. So what is the solution? The solution is, it's obvious, but those states have to come forward for education and employment opportunities, which ultimately depends on, good governance. Tamil Nadu, we have had very opposing kind of governments, but the overall development direction has not deviated. So that is something which is to the credit of the political parties here. So I will stop at this point. And if there are any questions, we take questions now or at the end? At the end. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, good evening and thank you very much for this opportunity to be here to speak on a very important issue, the context of which has already been set by my previous two speakers. Let me start by adding 2 or 3 more points to what Mr. Ramasundaram told. He talked about demographic transition, that is broadly the 3 phases. Phase 1, where there is very high death rate and very high birth rate. Phase 2, when there is death rate that is falling, but birth rate sticky, not falling. Phase 3, when we have birth rate as well as death rates falling. And phase 4 and 5 depends on the steepness of the fall of birth rate, which is falling more steeper than the other, but broadly 3. 1. Second, there is also a phenomenon what we call as structural transformation in an economy. That is, economies generally have an agrarian structure to start with, then move on to industrialization, and in the third phase of their economic development process will have a larger share for services in the economy. This process of moving from an agrarian economic structure to a service-oriented economic structure is the process of structural transformation, where the percentage share of each of these sectors in GDP varies. Initially, it will be agriculture that will be contributing more to GDP, and after a point, it will be services. Along with this percentage share in terms of value added, percentage shares in employment would also be changing, That is, initially, a lot of people might be working in agriculture, then there will be a lot of people working in industry, and then a lot of people working in services. Keep that also in mind. Third, there is a phenomenon of what we call as migration transition. That is, initially it will be the unskilled labor migrating, and once when the unskilled labor is migrating, generally, it is male migration, and there are only two extremes of it. Sometimes the entire family goes, or the male migrates, and that person will start a new family in that new location, and the family back home is dumped. That is unskilled. Second phase of migration is semi-skilled migration, where it is again predominantly male migration, but family is here and there is money coming back to the home place, not the host place. So host is where the migrant works and home is from where he is going. So there will be remittances for the economy, and that is semi-skilled. Third phase of migration is when the highly skilled people migrate, and when they migrate, generally it is with family, and they would prefer not to come back. We get to hear that. Once when they migrate, their own outlook towards India might change. We see our own students, after going to US will come back and say that, hi, India is very hot, it's dusty, kind of a thing, and the entire family moves there. But the loss is that we don't get remittances in that. Keep that in mind. One more point, then I'll come to my presentation. In 2047, 100 years of independence, we have a dream. And the dream is what we call as Vikasit Bharat. The dream is to acquire the tag or status of a developed economy, which by definition is $12,500 per capita income. As of now, the definition. By 2047, that definition might change. But as of now, the definition of a developed country status, according to World Bank, is $12,500 GDP per capita. India's GDP now is 2,200, let us grant it as $2,400. Now we are in 2024, and we have now 23 years to reach 2047. We have to move from $2,400 to $12,500 if we want to achieve that tag of a developed country status. My crude calculation in an Excel sheet shows that if you want to achieve this, you have to grow at any cost of 8 to 8.5% per year. Please remember, growth rate has a compounding effect. So you are growing this year, and the next year you are growing on top of that. So there is a compounding effect. So with that compounding effect, if you want to achieve $12,500 per capita consistently for the next 23 years, we have to grow at 8.5 or at least 8% rate of growth. India has never done that. The sweet spot in India's growth rate has been the period 2003 to 2007, just before the global financial crisis, 4 to 5 years, when we grew at 9% rate of growth, and in 1 year we clocked 9.5% rate of growth, and when we started to dream about double-digit growth rate, overtaking China and all these things, but after that, we have never grown at this rate, and perhaps the only phase in global history when economies grew at this high rate for nearly quarter of a century is only the Southeast Asian economies, what we call as the Asian miracle, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and things of that sort. So these are three things that I wanted to put into your mind before we talk about demographic dividend. Well, there is demographic transition, there is economic structural change, there is migration transition, and then we have this dream of getting to be a developed country status. Now let us try and put all these things together, and I will rush through my presentation. This is what I was talking about, right? That is, we need to have contributions from all segments of the society, particularly children and youth. if we really want to achieve to that 2047 because it's Bharat dream. Yeah? Now, what should be then our focus to achieve that? So please remember, I am not telling that demographic dividend is a boon or a bane. Yeah, and you know that professors are very careful. They won't take a position. They're always fence sitters. They can be either this side or this side, right? So I'm putting all this onto you with a preamble in terms of 3 or 4 facts, and then putting out some numbers and facts at you, and then it is up to you to really make up whether it is a boon or a bane. Okay. So what is that we need? We need to have national investments in children and youth, and that only will yield long-term returns. And that is the main point that I really want to highlight. Okay. So this point was talked about earlier that, there is a fertility decline phenomenon that is happening, right? And once when the dependency ratios actually come down, and when there is a larger percentage of youth or working age population, then there is a possibility of getting what we call as a demographic dividend. Now, there is also a positive thing of this, that is, once when fertility declines, when the number of children actually per family reduces, then you can invest more per child. And we see that, right? We can send them to better schools, we can teach them English, we can actually give them the best of gadgets nowadays, we can buy them the best of mobile phones and send them to colleges. All this is possible. But if you have a larger family size, then there is a problem. Investment per child is actually less, which means that what we in economics call as human capital formation will be very difficult if there is no fertility decline, and that's a problem which developing countries face. Okay. But please remember the last part, that is, with the passage of time, the share of older population rises, right? And then the demographic dividend will slowly start to vanish. So there is only a window of demographic opportunity. You can't actually reap this after some time. So if you want to reap it, you have to act now. Please don't postpone. That's the point that I want to emphasize. Yeah, because economies have gone through this. Yeah, and they have lost that window now. We are having that window now, and we should actually hit hard when the iron is hot. So, the point that I want to emphasize is that what is required is forward-looking policies. Yeah? And we need to incorporate 3 elements in such forward-looking policies. That is population dynamics, very important. Mr. Satyamurthy talked about that, the importance of that in policy making. Education and skills, extremely important. We also need to take care of health. COVID is a big kind of a lesson for all of us in that. Gender sensitivity, very important, and I'll come to that towards the end of my presentation. And also we need to provide some kinds of rights and choices for the younger generation to express themselves, to reap the full potential of this youth. So, this is something that I wanted to try here. That is, the median age as far as India is concerned is around 26 now. Yeah. And that's not bad. It was actually 28. Now we are moving to 36. After some time, the median age actually increases. Once when the median age increases, well, productivity actually comes down, and then, as Mr. Satyamurthy was talking, we would become an aged society, and that has got its own consequences. Now let me throw some numbers on this.
Can you come back by one slide?
Yeah.
Can you spend one more minute on that?
Yeah. So this is the median age in India, and this I have put the median age of some of the other emerging and developing economies. Yeah. Sorry, I did not explain that. I focused only on India. Yeah. Now, well, when we look at the median age and when we look at unemployment, we really have a very, very sorry state of affairs. That is, first of all, we don't have a comprehensive data on employment. Yeah? There are so many agencies that collect data on employment. The CMI gives. PLFS, the government, official statistics provides, there are other agencies. Now, I am taking one agency, that is the CMIS name. Yeah. And this is something which comes up again and again, that unemployment is the highest among youth, which means that, tied up with what I started off, that there is a window of opportunity, the percentage of youth is in the population is high, but at the same time, unemployment is also high among this youth. And this is an outlier because this is the COVID period. Yeah. So let's cut it out. But still, when we look at the other age group in terms of unemployment, we find that unemployment is very high in the age group, especially between 20 to 24. And please remember, this by definition is what we call as NEET, not our NEET medical examination. Yeah. Neither in education, employment or training. That's what we are calling here. So what are they doing then? They are neither in education, they are not in employment, they are not in training. So they're just languishing, this youth. Yeah? And that's the problem which we will have to encounter. And please remember, when I talk all of this, we need to see it in the perspective of Vikasit Bharat 2047. Okay. This is a state-wise breakup in terms of unemployment, and Mr. Ramasundaram talked about this, which are the states which are labor exporting states and which are the states which are labor receiving states, is well known in India, and I don't need to spend time on that. There is one point that I want to draw your attention to for this slide. That is, we find that regular wage workers now, regular wage worker means like me. When I say like me, I am privileged. I am privileged means I have all social security benefits, I have my LTC, I have pensions, I can take leave, right? But when you are looking at a casual laborer and when you are looking at a self-employed person, they don't have any of this. That comes to a very important point, that the quality of jobs that are getting generated in the economy needs to be closely looked at. Right? Because if I don't have good quality jobs, well, then there is a problem, and that problem is basically what we call as very fragile jobs. Yeah. I would like to draw your attention to our two neighbors, Sri Lanka as well as Bangladesh. Yeah. Tremendous increase in terms of jobs in particular sectors, low value added work, right? And after a point leads to a lot of instabilities. Yeah. And we saw the results of that. Finally, there is a problem in terms of gender disparities in labor force participation. Right? There is no country in the world which has actually moved forward in terms of GDP per capita without women getting into the labor force. And India, we find that the difference between male and female labor force participation is one of the highest. Right? And just to put it in a perspective, so this is with one set of countries when I am comparing with Turkey, Mexico and things of that sort, Cambodia, Tanzania, and this is with Sri Lanka, Mexico, Indonesia, Brazil and China. Right? We find that the gap, the gender gap in terms of percentage points is the highest as far as India is concerned. So this is the context in which we have to see this whole issue of demographic, whatever, transition and its dividend. What could be the forward-looking policies? And I'll stop here. So 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes, please. Well, once I think we need to start looking towards the East, and it's very important, at least in this context, because East provides us very interesting kind of insights. Generally, we look at West and we think that, West is the model, but East has got very important lessons. Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea, they have already shown how demographic dividend can be reached, yeah, with an incredible kind of growth accelerating policies. And there are very important lessons for India. One, there is this window of opportunity and India has already begun to get this dividend. If you want to continue to reap this dividend, we need to put in proactive policies. First, I have 6 or 7 points. I list out one by one. First, I think we need to spend more on children. What? A child in India consumes around 60% of the consumption of an adult. Right? Aged between 20 to 64. But a child in China consumes around 85%. So, it is time that we actually take care of our children more if we really want to reap demographic dividend. Second, same repeating, invest more in children. When we are looking at children, particularly in terms of nutrition and learning, yeah, I don't know if any one of you have seen the Economist magazine 2 issues back. There is a very, very disturbing kind of a lead article in that school achievements globally are not really going up, and school achievements in developing economies are actually falling. One of the points that we get in terms of extensive research on school performance and the other socio-economic variables is that if children have poor nutrition levels, their ability to comprehend would also come down. So we need to really spend a lot in terms of nutrition and learning in terms of early childhood, and that's why the first 1000 days and all are very, very important. Okay. Third, health is very well known. Yeah, education and health. We don't need to underline it. And we spend very, very less in terms of GDP. Yeah. And it's important to have some policies where we increase this funding on health. And this is to be linked with nutrition as well as other kind of investments that we make on children. Now, this is something which I am repeating again in the middle because we are talking about forward looking. Why I say that this is very important because this is India, whereas our other Southeast Asian partners have almost crossed this opportunity, and we still have that opportunity. If we can get our policies right now, we can actually reap the dividend. We have not missed the bus yet. Okay. Fourth, very important, reproductive health care. Yeah. And accessible and rights-based reproductive health care is something which is very, very important. Now, whenever this National Family Health Survey comes, there will be always a debate. Government says that all this data is not very good. Other people say that no, this data shows this thing, that thing, and things of that sort. Last time it reached a flashpoint where the survey conducting its director had to step down. Right? So there is a problem when we talked about healthcare, especially in terms of reproductive healthcare. Fifth, gender equality as far as education is concerned. Yeah? That is, in India, still we find that boys are more likely to be enrolled in secondary and tertiary than girls. Secondary and tertiary education than girls. Yeah? And in Philippines, China and Thailand is very interesting. Yeah? We find that, girls have higher probability of getting enrolled in secondary and tertiary. We need to reverse this. Yeah? Japan, South Korea and Indonesia, we don't need to even think because the differential is actually very less. And sixth, the point that I already made, that is, we need to increase female workforce participation in the economy. Yeah? And here, very interesting case is South Korea. Yeah? Female participation rate is almost 50% in South Korea. And this is basically built on mandatory institutional requirements like gender budgeting, increase in childcare benefits, very important, tax incentives for part-time work. Yeah? So we need to think of how we can actually incentivize more women to enter into the labor market. Yeah? Seventh, there is vast diversity. We saw that in the beginning in terms of per capita, the map that put in per capita incomes across states. Yeah? Which means that we also need to think about, well, now this is of no big agenda. We are sure that we're going to miss that. Yeah. We thought that we could make some headway towards 2030 SDGs, but we will not be able to come anywhere near that. Yeah. But it is important that we understand this diversity and frame policies which are region specific, as was pointed out earlier. Finally, a lot of these things happen at the state level. There is very less that center can do. And it is again the point that was mentioned earlier, that it is the institutional and governance capacity of the states that actually need to be improved if India is to reap this dividend. I'll stop here and will be happy to take questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh Babu. Now we invite Professor Mahalingam.
So, hi everyone, good evening. Am I audible? Yeah, okay. So, this is my first public speaking, so please pardon me if I'm struggling a bit, but I just want to share a few thoughts here. Probably I've already covered, but like as a true economist, we never take a side, right? Like Sir said, we are always on as a fence sitters. So, I'm going to take a cautiously optimistic approach. That is the terminology we say, right? So I don't want to call it as a Bane or Boon. Rather, I would take a cautiously optimistic approach. I mean, so we already know what are the challenges that we have when it comes to the Indian, demographic dividend. So I'm going to touch upon a few strategies that we could kind of look into to overcome the challenges as well as to tap the opportunities, right? So I'm going to kind of share a few incidents that I came across. So because I'm closely associated with the government of Tamil Nadu and we are working on a few projects there. So we are working on this planning commission project and we happen to visit Perambalur district. Okay, so there we were interacting with the officials from the skill development department. Okay. So there was a, they were lamenting that, there is a, kind of labor force shortage, especially in the semi-skilled area. So they were saying that, for example, in ITI, so they are not getting, enough students enrolled. But on the other hand, we have so many engineering students enrolled where they are unable to find a job, right? So that in the demand and supply in terms of scholars, the jobs, the demand and supply mismatch is there. And also like employability. So another scheme I'll share actually. So I don't know how many of you came across the scheme by government of Tamil Nadu. It's called Non-Mudalvan. So basically, the scheme is kind of like conceived with the idea to improve the employability of the engineering graduates in Tamil Nadu. Okay. So during the initial round of the meeting, I happened to attend that. So where the bureaucrats as well as the people from corporates were also there. So when the government people, when the bureaucrats were asking why not enough jobs are being created in the economy to kind of to cater to to address this problem, they were saying that it is not about the unavailability of jobs, but rather it is about the demand, the skill demand supply mismatch. So that is the point they were talking about, right? So especially if you think of AI or ML, that area, we have so many openings, but then does our education, be it in terms of school education or college education, does it actually, cater to that demand? Unfortunately, no. I mean, today also I had a discussion, sorry if I'm sharing too many anecdotes here, but then today I had a discussion with one of the, TNAG official, and was talking about the way our school education has become. So how many of you remember what dy dx is? If you think of calculus, we have something called slope, right? So we call it dy dx. So what is the actual interpretation of that? Can anyone say what it is? We all simply say slope or, the point of tangency. So that, a technical definition we give, but then do we really know what the dy dx stands for? What it is actually, dy dx stands for. It is slope, you say slope, or you say that, you can write a mathematical formula if it is, Exactly, sir. Like, but still, I mean, is it the actual interpretation of Levi clause? No, right? So see how our education system has become. And I feel like, we focus too much on, like there's something called STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM. So like, why not, focus on, like, let's say, arts and social sciences? Because, like, I'm from agriculture background, I mean, my UG, because I had my math, biology. But the moment I switched to economics, there was like criticism from my family and my friends, like, why are you going into arts? But there is like, so much opportunity in that area. Right? So the quality, I mean, the education quality is something that we have to focus on. That is one aspect. Another thing I wanted to talk about is, there is no such thing called like one size fits all. So when the government kind of devises, policies and schemes, so they have to keep in mind, the diversity of the country. So that is something that which they have to focus on. Then also when we talk about upskilling, so it has to be something that is gradual and continuous in nature. I mean, the learning never stops, right? So if you become part of an organization, you have to keep learning. So that is something that has to be instilled. And I mean, the current Gen Z, they are looking for instant gratification. So how do you imbibe that, the culture of continuous learning in them? So these are some of the things that I feel like we have to focus on if we really want to tap that, the opportunity of reaping that demographic dividend. Okay. So then another thing I wanted to talk about is, the government can't do everything. I mean, we do have a much strain on the financial resources. So, I mean, I feel like it is an effort in the society as a whole, rather than just kind of like, expecting that the government should do everything. Okay. So I think the society has to be conscious and aware of as to what we should do. And there should be like a lot of discussion happening. Unfortunately, I feel like this topic, this demographic dividend, how to reap it, I feel like it has kind of like become overlooked. So that's something, we have to do. And also, there is a last point I wanted to talk about, is focusing on innovation. Right? So of course, there are like so many startups that have come up, but then, the current Gen Z, they don't want to be no longer, employees, rather, they want to have their own startups and things like that. So the innovation is something that they have to look into, in the sense the government has to, I mean, there are like n number of schemes. It's not that, we have better schemes, but that's something which the government has to address. Okay. So of course there are like n number of strategies that we can think of when it comes to the reaping the demographic dividends, but predominantly I feel like we have to focus on the addressing the gaps that we have right now in the education sector. So I feel like that's something which we have to think about. And also, we Sar spoke about the gender equality, or the more labor for participation from female side, right? Because of course there are arguments that the care work has to be recognized, but I don't know whether that is really part of the true economy. So there should be equal participation from women as well. That should be something that we have to encourage. Okay? So I think that's all from my side. I just wanted to share. I think we can just move on to now Q&A now. Thank you.
We have some questions as always. Any questions from the floor? No. Okay. Now, there is one for Dr. Suresh Babu. Given the increasing life expectancy in India, what economic policies should be prioritized to balance the needs of an aging population with the aspirations of a younger workforce? Are we really to handle the growing old population.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very difficult question to answer. There is no straightforward answer to that. But one of the things that came up in McKinsey's report maybe 4 weeks back was there is an increasing trend among population which is older in the sense that 62 plus returning to the workforce in the post-COVID times. So I think a lot of this, old age economic security can be taken care of if we provide some kind of a flexibility in terms of, jobs, A. B, a combination of social security benefits when we talk about social security, basically health, yeah. And C, some kind of technology improvements which can assist this aged. A very simple kind of an anecdote. If we are really going to a railway station to catch a train, and if we want to cross over to the other side, well, there could be a lift and there could be also an escalator. But approaching the lift and escalator itself becomes a task at times. Yeah, not only for the aged, even for the young. So that is where I think we need to have domestic absorption of technology. India produces marvelous technologies. There's no doubt about that. But the domestic absorption of technologies could be increased. And this domestic absorption of technologies could actually be a kind of a game changer as far as the youth as well as the aged is concerned.
Thank you. Now, on to Mr. Ramasundaram. Drawing from your experience in government and corporate leadership, how should India prepare for the economic challenges posed by an aging population, particularly in terms of pension schemes and social security, without undermining the potential benefits of its current youth demographic?
Thank you. I would not worry too much about the old like me. I would worry about the poor. According to government's own data, 11% of India's population is below the poverty line, what is called multidimensional poverty, which is about $2.9 per day per person. The government claims it has come down from about 22% to 11% in the last 10 years. So 11% of 140 crore is about 15.5 crores. By itself, it will be the 5th largest country if you rank it after India, China, and Indonesia and the US. The distribution of this 15.5 crores is the issue. 83% of this 15.5 crores is in UP, Bihar and Jharkhand. So that is, I think, a more serious issue for the government to handle than, worrying about older people who have lived a full life. But there are people, young people, who are not able to afford 3 meals a day or even 2 meals a day in those states. So that is where the focus should be. And Dr. Suresh Babu made a very good point on nutrition. Investing in children. I remember when we were in the government, when Mr. MGR's Sattunavu Thittam was launched, everybody said it is a populist scheme. But there is a World Bank paper which says because of that scheme, enrollment of girls increased in schools, then it delayed their marriageable age. And they wanted to work. If you study until 12, then you want to go to college, then you want to work. So that delayed the age at marriage. And that is one of the reasons for the sharp fertility decline in Tamil Nadu. So I think we need to, look at investing in health and nutrition, even in those poor states, which can be done by government.
One more question alongside. Is India's joint family system helping in the cause as a continuation of the previous?
I don't know, in the urban areas, I don't think there is any joint family. In, Besant Nagar, very close to where I live, is full of what they call parent orphans. Because the children are in the US, visit them once a year.
Welcome.
So that is not, nuclear families will be the way forward. The issue is, once again, if you see the income disparities, in the southern states, we are probably going to reach East European levels by about 2030, close to $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. Whereas the other end, Bihar and UP are closer to sub-Saharan Africa, Sierra Leone, Burkina Faso. So that is the problem. The disparity between states in India is the issue. That is what I want to keep repeating. So, which is not good for the country in the long run.
One more question to you, sir. You can make a choice about whether you want to respond. How should India's policymaker approach the delayed national census, and what insights can it provide to better harness the demographic dividend?
No, the census should be taken. There is no, doubts about it. Why government has not done it, we don't know. It has not been, more than 100 years we have had censuses. Now it's all estimates. So census should be taken. On how to benefit from demographic dividend, it again, varies from state to state. You must have seen in the newspapers that over 40% of female factory workers are in Tamil Nadu, whose overall share in population is only 7%. So why is it so? That is the key to development.
Thank you, sir. Now, one for Professor Mahalingam. You can try this question, sir. In what ways can social safety nets such as pension schemes be restructured to address the economic burden of an aging population without compromising on the economic potential of the younger generation? That is a similar question has been rephrased, I think, by another. Would you like to take it?
Sure, sir. So, I think
Please.
we have the answer already because, for the people who are working in the organized sector, there is already, enough, social safety net, what you call it. But then again, we have to think about the people who are working in the unorganized sector. Of course, the government has come up with few schemes now. That Atal pension, stuff like that. But then again, as of now, we don't have a comprehensive, kind of social security scheme that would cater to the large section of the population. Whatever the existing schemes are there now, it is kind of catering to only the people who are working in the organized sector. So I think that's something which we have to work on. But again, the caveat is that it will cause a huge strain on the public finance because we're already running a huge fiscal deficit. But I don't know how much that bandwidth we have, when it comes to kind of coming up with such universal social security scheme that would address the the huge population. So yeah.
Thank you. One for you,
I would
Doctor.
like to-
Please.
I think this question has come up repeatedly, taking care of the old versus the youth. I would say invest in the future, not in the past.
Now, Dr. Suresh Babu, what are the potential long-term economic implications if the nation fails to effectively capitalize on its demographic dividend?
Just one word, disaster. Because, regional imbalances, we already heard about that, and that will widen. One. There is also a phenomenon that India is witnessing, underlying, that is this widespread economic inequality that is coming up. Yeah? I don't want to name, we see, weddings where, 5,000 crores are spent, and we also see multidimensional poverty, as Sir was talking. So there is an underlying economic inequality that is actually, and if that spreads, then all our democratic structures, institutions, governance structures, everything will be under threat. And I think that is one big kind of a thing. I really want to add one more point here. That is about data. Yeah, and that is very important when we talk about any kind of policy making, because now we talk about evidence-based policy making and things of that sort. If we don't have census now, we are supposed to have it in 2021. Of course, COVID and all this kind of thing. Now we are in 2024. We have kind of digital equipments which can actually be very useful. It's high time that we had census. One. Two, we also need to really improve our statistical system. For example, migrants data is something which really was lacking when we were talking about the COVID return migration and things of that sort. We don't have an authentic data in terms of migration. Consumption survey just came out to understand poverty. But again, that's a very partial kind of a picture that it is showing. So as a nation, we also need to improve our statistical system, which was once upon a time excellent or one of the best in the world. And that is where I think our policymakers should also pay some attention to.
You would like?
Yeah,
Please.
so I just add like one more point here. I mean, like Sir rightly pointed, it's about the availability of data at the right time as well as the quality of the data. So the two key things I think right now we are missing. So from that point, I want to cite one simple example. I don't know how many of you heard this term called something called like upward mobility. Like how, like the society as, like from one generation when they move to the next generation, how they reach the next strata in terms of their, like per capita income or whatever you call it, right? So there is one study by Professor Retd from Harvard University where he was able to kind of use the granular data that is available at the zip code level. And then he was able to come up with, like which zip code or what you call it as a pin code is associated with, like higher upward economic mobility and why that is happening. Okay. So such kind of, like research work, especially in countries like India where we have so much diversity is needed. But unfortunately for the want of data as well as the availability of quality data, we are unable to, like kind of carry out such studies, which, but again, would help us in devising appropriate schemes.
I would like to add one point. I think, we have enough data for policy making. Let's not give an excuse to the policymakers. We don't have enough data, that's why we're not able to make good policies. I think we know, the overall structure, which Dr. Suresh Babu mentioned, the widening inequality among people, among states, it's very well known. If we don't know the decimal point, it doesn't, matter for policy making. So let's not, highlight too much about the lack of data, then that will be used as an excuse, we don't have data, otherwise you would have made a wonderful policy.
Thank you, sir. And someone here has read Professor Suresh Babu's mind, I would say. That is how the question is. How can regional disparities within the country affect the overall demographic dividend? What strategies can be implemented to ensure inclusive growth across different states? Disciplined state, how come disciplined, economically disciplined, I see, say, or sociologically disciplined state lose out in the context?
I think with your permission,
All three of you.
I will pass this question to an experienced policymaker.
Yes, that is where it should begin.
No, I think it's the quality of governance in the states which will eventually matter, and it's beyond the people in this hall, either on the dais or in the audience. We only have to pray that good sense prevails in those states, and those governments start focusing on real investments on education, children and the youth, and not look at religious places or other divisive factors. Once development takes place, you don't look at your neighbor from the religious angle or something. You want to see how much he is earning, what kind of car he is driving, like a Western society. So that is what we should aspire for, nor where he is going to pray or where he is going to take a procession. So that is where the difference between the developed and the not so developed states in India. So eventually it We are a democracy. Ultimately, the elected leaders will have to take responsibility.
Anybody? Anyone? Please.
Yeah, just to add to that point, in terms of governance, I think it is important to have very robust institutions and institutions which actually can survive for a long period of time. And public institutions are very, very important at that. And when we look at the history of economic growth of developed countries, we find that such public institutions are very robust and they survive for long periods. The durability of institutions is something that I think we need to really focus if we really want to make some progress.
Now, the next question is, considering the global examples like in US and Japan, how can India avoid potential pitfalls of an aging population while maximizing the benefits of its current youthful demography? This comparison continues to come up again and again in our questions. You would like to take it, sir?
So again, given what a little knowledge I have, looking at the social security schemes in US, we need to have a robust social security scheme covering the unorganized sector too. But we do not have a definite answer for this, given that it will cause a huge strain on the public finance in India, because US is already facing that. They are saying that eventually at the current rate they are paying out the social security to the beneficiaries. They are saying that they are going to run out of the funds in another few years actually. So if countries like US and Japan are struggling, but I'm not sure what the government could do. Rather it could be something that government should do everything. Perhaps that may not work. It could be something that is contributory in nature. One simple example is that the new pension scheme that NPS the government has come up with. So along the same lines, perhaps for the unorganized sector too. I mean, there is scheme where if you chip in something for the Atal pension yojana or something, right? So you have to put something. The government will also contribute something. Maybe that's something which can be expanded, for time being. And again, a lot more study has to be done in this aspect.
Please.
Just to add to that, at the moment for central government employees, the monthly outgo on pensions, people like me and Mr. Sivasailam, is higher than salaries to working people, which has been the trend for the last 2 or 3 years. It will change only when the people who were recruited after 2004 under the contributory pension scheme or the new pension scheme, they start retiring, then the burden on pension will come down. So my point is the same. I think if somebody has survived for 60 years, he or she will somehow survive further. Invest in the future, in the children and the youth. That is the most important point for the future of this country. Our generation is whatever it is. It's it is not the future. So invest in the future. Dr. Suresh Babu has put those data very much in context of nutrition and healthcare. That is where we should focus on.
So, last question. What role do you see for the private sector in shaping the demographic dividend, especially in sectors like manufacturing and services? Would you like to take?
There are articles appearing now and then saying that India can switch over from agriculture to services directly, mainly because of 3 or 4 IT companies which have employed lakhs of youngsters. But except small island economies, Singapore and Taiwan, there is no example of any country jumping from agriculture to services directly. You have to go through manufacturing. When I was a student in University of Southern California, the professor, Richard Easterlin, he is an economic historian, he used to call out this fallacy. People in India think that service economy can feed on itself. The example he gave was airline employees and hotel employees. So airline people stay in hotels and hotel people use airlines. But that is not enough. The numbers are not enough. The manufacturing people have to use both hotels and airlines. Then only those service industries can prosper, not on each other's travel and room nights. So manufacturing is where private industry should, I think, create jobs. And, recently Ms. Geeta Gopinath, Deputy MD of IMF, has said India has to generate about 140 million jobs in the next decade. So there, I think the private sector has a major role to play.
Just to add to that, one of the things that we have to also reckon with is this whole new animal or creature, what we call as AI. Because that is going to really mess up a lot of these numbers that we have shown, and how the industry is going to adopt that and how we are going to utilize that will have a serious impact perhaps. Thank you.
Just want to add like one point. Again, this is something very serious actually. I mean, from statistics point of view, there's something called gross capital formation, right? So I feel like it has become stagnant, like industries are now focusing more on cost cutting. They don't go into expansion because they are not investing much in the capex part. That's something calls for serious introspection among the, like private sector. They are focusing on, like kind of appeasing the stakeholders and, by indulging in cost cutting measures, they don't really invest in, like R&D or, if you look at the R&D expenditure classification of, different companies, I don't know. That's something which they have to focus on. GCF has to be increased. It has remained stagnant. So that's something which I wanted to add.
We come to an end of a very informative session. Thank you, gentlemen, on the dais for making it informative and educative. And thank you, my audience also. Particularly, I thank the young students who are here, the next generation that Mr. Ramasundaram particularly talked about. In particular, I also note that the female students who are participating here for the first time have sat through this session without looking at the clock and running away. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Satyamurthy. Ladies and gentlemen, I think thank Mr. Ramasundaram, Suresh and Maha. It's a fascinating evening because a lot of points came out which you should take, because we do a lot of CSR work in the schools. I know the children, I've seen them, wherever we give them food and nutritious food, children are very, very attentive. I think one of the days they don't get the morning breakfast, I could see them, and they're all coming from very, very poor family. And as we said, the women employment, very, very important. A fascinating evening, and thanks viewers. We have over 540 viewers watched online, and so many questions that come from online. That's the reason. Thank you so much. Thanks all the participants. I request maybe our committee members to join us on stage. President Momentum. Come, can you step in?
All used to be.
I know that. Come. There's a book, we will like it.
இங்க ஒரு
By us. Opening book. Yes. MMA publication. Okay. Turning point management. Okay. Thank you. Thanks. Yes, yes. We will like it, sir. You read them. I want your feedback. Lovely. Lovely to have.